Yo, so recently my friend and I, Fathers, shot a music video on the Krasnogorsk 3, and I'm just making this video as a summary about things that I liked about it and things that I found didn't work so well and were a little bit sort of sketchy. The main thing, honestly, guys, is that you could load the film during the day, which is crazy for anyone who is not trained like cinematographer like us. The next thing is that the stock lens or the zoom lens that's very commonly found on this camera is really, really good. The zoom itself is super nice and it's actually got quite a long distance. The next thing is that the camera's super small and it's not as small as the Bolex and compact as the Bolex, but it is still small. I also love the fact that we could just shoot a lot of things handheld with it, and it was big enough that it's stable, but also small enough that we don't need to have like an easy rig. The next thing is that it's relatively affordable. In Europe, it goes for around 550 euros. I don't know what it's like in America. The next thing I loved about this camera is that it requires no batteries unless you want to use the built-in light meter, which, by the way, I do not recommend. You crank it, you wind the motor on the side manually, and then you hold down the shoot button and it just rolls itself. However, this does allow me to segue onto the things I didn't like so much about this camera. You do have to wind that shit. There was a few times during the shoot, because we're not used to shooting on this kind of mechanism, where we would shoot for like 20 seconds and then it would just stop because we'd forgotten to wind the camera. The shooting duration when you fully wind up the camera is around 40 to 45 seconds when you're shooting at 24 FPS. This made it super difficult actually to shoot performance shots where you have, especially for a music video, a verse and a chorus. It meant that we had to keep using a slate to go in and shoot a verse, stop, rewind it, shoot a chorus. And when you don't have sound built into the camera, like the Krasnogorsk, it doesn't have any sound to capture in the camera. You have to use like an iPhone externally to sync it all. And it's a lot more hassle, especially when you have to keep rewinding it. The next thing that we found with shooting on this camera is that when you frame the subject is not necessarily exactly where the eyepiece of the camera is telling you. When we got it processed, we found out, everything on the Krasnogorsk is slightly to the right. You have a little bit more room to the right, which you shoot. So yeah, that was a little bit annoying because it was not so accurate to what we were seeing, which meant that in post we had to fix like quite a few things in terms of framing. The next thing is that it was super hard to find any other lenses to shoot on this camera with in Germany. I know that in England there's more options and perhaps in America also, but the only two wide angle lenses, because we were looking for wide angle lenses, are the Peleng 8mm, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, and the Zenitar 16mm. We couldn't find any in Germany, any in Berlin that were available. It was really hard to find one with an M42 mount. It's okay, life goes on. The next thing for us was that when we got the film processed and got it back, we realized there was a lot of shake on the image. I think this is due to the fact that the motor was not so stable, and that's probably to do with our specific camera. I'm sure there's other cameras out there where it's a lot smoother. Another thing we noticed was that when you look through the zoom lens, when you zoom in on the zoom lens, the image kind of curves up and to the right. So you have a different end point. It made framing the subject super difficult when we had a beginning point and an end point. In the end, we didn't use the light meter. We used a phone app called Lux something. I'll write it now. That worked out super well for Fares to just use the app, look at the subject through his phone, and then change the settings accordingly to his camera. Apart from that, honestly, this camera's super nice to shoot with. We didn't even measure a lot of the times the focal distances, and pretty much all of our footage is in focus. It was super accurate, and yeah, the image that came out is really beautiful. So I'm super happy with how the music video turned out in the end. But yeah, those are just some of the things I like and sort of dislike about this camera. Of course, they're very specific to me and this specific camera. I can understand if you have other opinions around it. This is just my first time using it and sharing that experience with you. Have a lovely day. Ciao, peace, bye.